Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to Lion Voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, from to us a son was born and a child was given.
I want to ask you a question. Have you got your book? Haile Selassie I, Ethiopia, Volume 1, The Rise of the Priest Warrior King. I've read the book in its entirety, and I must say it's very inspirational, very informative, and very historical, right?
Them call him Rastafari. When he was born, rain fall from the sky. Them call him Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. They call him Rastafari. Lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Them call him Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Then born near the city of Harar, the inspiration for Bob Marley's guitar. People crowd him like some big superstar. It no matter if England.
Menelik, had to build his strength against Tigray and the coast, and so he went south where the Oromo kingdoms were, and there were bloody battles because the Oromo are proud people and they did not want to submit. Ultimately, Menelik was victorious, and the argument is that had Menelik not done that, because this was during the Scramble of Africa period, the Berlin Conference, the borders had been divided in the capital of Germany at the time, which was Berlin. If Menelik had not brought these kingdoms under the Ethiopian realm, they would have been assumed into the European powers that were neighboring. So them staying independent as smaller kingdoms was not an option in this era. So that's an important detail that we have to put into consideration when we're talking about this and looking at the choices that Menelik had to make. So you could even see from that clip, and I have the whole history of the Zemeni Massafit in the book. We talk about Rasta Lee, Empress Manen, all of those things, his mother, who was a real power at the time. We talk about Gran, the left-handed, when you could argue that there was an era where the Somali ethnic group had great power in the realm, coming from Harar and the tribes from the Ogaden, which were like the sands of the seashore. When you read the conquest of Abyssinia, also many Oromo were part of that. This is when the Islamic conversions were at their height, and many of the Oromo were converted into Islam at this time. So this was a period of Oromo dominance. So all of these different groups have had their time of dominance. So this brings I to the question to my Oromo, to my Amhara, to my Tigray brothers: where does the cycle stop? This is what we have to ask ourselves. Where does the cycle of war stop? Yes, each of these major groups or kingdoms have had their time of dominance in the realm. Yes, Menelik was from Showa. Yes, Haile Selassie I, the first father, was from Showa, but he also had Oromo and Goragi blood. So, who do we attribute his reign to? Most people are going to say Showa and the Amhara. But when you study the reign of His Majesty, you find that there was opposition from Showa to many of his reforms. The church opposed many of his reforms. Where does it stop? Where does it end, my Ethiopian family? So when I see the FANO uprising, and I see the exuberance, machine guns raised, and the heroic bravery of Ethiopia, we're not short of warriors and war and warfare. But I caution my Amhara brothers and sisters, this war cannot be won militarily. Let's say FANO is able to oust the government and take power in the realm. How long is there going to be peace in Ethiopia to build a better standard of living for the people? Will the Oromo, after being defeated on the military battlefield, or stay down forever? This cycle will never end. And so this battle cannot be won on the battlefield. And I want this to sink deep into whoever is leading the FANO fighters, because we know that the elites of all of these ethnic groups are kingdoms, from that time until this time, always are the ones who make the call for war and can make the call for peace. So to the bigger heads, how will the cycle stop? The Oromo, the Amhara, Tigray, when will it stop? If we look at that excerpt of the book that was read, I read it because we can see the chaos, that war arises. When Emperor Theodros is deposed, what happens? His soldiers are massacred by the Oromo queen, Warkitu. So, do the people who are the descendants of Theodros' soldiers, many of whom would have been Amhara, but some would have been Aga, from other regions as well. Should they keep a blood debt forever and want to destroy the Oromo for all time? You heard that Tigray took power, subdued Showa. Think of it. Should Showa forever hold a grudge against Tigray? Tigray ultimately would have been defeated by Emperor Menelik, or chosen to acquiesce to the power of Emperor Menelik. Should Tigray hold an eternal grudge against Showa? How do we develop the nation? How do we get to a united and powerful Africa that is going to play its role globally if we continue in this perpetual cycle of war? And now, my brothers and sisters, we get to the nitty-gritty. Now you see why outside forces want to fund these entities to fight against each other. As long as Ethiopia stays at war, it will delay the rising of the African continent. It's not coincidence that so many African countries have red, gold, and green in their flags, brothers and sisters. This represents the symbol that Ethiopia has played throughout the ages. It's not an accident that you have the Abyssinian Baptist Church in America. Ethiopia plays a role, that word sound plays a role. That this is why His Majesty chose to call the country Ethiopia, going forward to the name used by the Aksumite kings as opposed to Abyssinia, which was widely used before. This is why His Majesty stamped that sound of Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a concept, my brothers and sisters. Ethiopia meaning sun-kissed faces, or the sunburned faces, meaning black people. Tied to the land. This is why His Majesty said, I'm not a Negro, I'm an Ethiopian. I'm not, they didn't identify as black or these things, they identified as Ethiopian. Ethiopia is a symbol of unity, and this was a vision of His Majesty, not just for Ethiopia, but for the whole world. And His Majesty, this is why during the Derg time, His Majesty, you see, was marked by negotiation. He was at the negotiating table for months before they put him under house arrest and all of these things. And it was his refusal to enter into armed conflict with the Derg that allowed the Derg to take the country. And this is why it was widely said that His Majesty had become senile, because he refused. But we have to understand, and I will continue to say, that His Majesty took a militant stand for peace. To hold the upright and mark the perfect man, for the end of that man is peace. So His Majesty showed us within that perfection of man, the perfecting of man. And He said that peace is not it's a becoming. Peace is not a stagnant state. It's not, I got here and now it's peace. So we said the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until the coming of Shiloh. His Majesty held the scepter at the coronation. What was that scepter symbolizing? It was symbolizing that divine rule. It was symbolizing that covenant that was given unto David and Solomon. And this is why you won't hear I burning the biblical or the Judeo-Hebraic legacy that resides in Ethiopia. Because when you look at the symbols and you look at how His Majesty ruled and how he communicates, he chose that framework. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. So there's no one in Ethiopia with a scepter until the coming of Shiloh. Shiloh meaning peace on earth. So that peace that His Majesty established by refusal to go into armed struggle with his fellow Ethiopians is peace on earth. And we see that as he established that there is no more scepter in Ethiopia, so the scepter is no longer now required as the governance, because as His Majesty said, the sacrifice of Yeshua, the Almighty, dwell within the hearts of man. So we as Rastafari, Haile Selassie I dwells within our hearts. He disappeared from Ethiopia in 1975, August 27, 1975. They said that he was murdered. And I say that, I have some land in Antarctica that I would sell you if you believe the Derg account. And if you think that the Derg would not have paraded His Majesty's body for all to see, or had an open casket funeral for all to see in that time, these Marxists and the symbol of the imperial government gone down after they had murdered so many in the cabinet. Again, I could sell you some land in Antarctica. His Majesty disappeared. They had no body to show. They had nothing to show. Bob Marley sung it. Jah live, children, yeah. Jah live, children, yeah. That song was made in reference to that particular time.
Well, the leaders of the world have failed in their responsibility to lead the youths them to a brighter future. Well, I and I hear the conquering line of the tribe of Judah, Earth's rightful ruler. I just the way Rastafari crowd, unconquerable. Me come to tell them now about Babylon, they're falling down. To far right is uncle you. Me come to tell them about the way Rastafari crowd, unconquerable. Me come to tell them now about Babylon, they're falling down. To far right is uncle you. Me come to tell them about Holy Palace intrigue, in fighting between Solomon's seed. Well, Empress Title want her family to lead. Well, King Michael want him son to lead, but King Michael now watch the orphan married to him niece, who get up every day and a study and a read. He work and he pray every day. He achieve. Them say you're the leader. Every nation need a just the way Rastafari crown, unconquerable. Me come to tell them about Babylon, they're falling down. To far right is uncle you. Me come to tell them about the Rastafari crown, unconquerable. Me come to tell them about Babylon, they're falling down. To far right is uncle you. Well, Ras Michael, son was having a good time when he should mind the affairs of the state, cause he's descent from the great line of Menelik II. But he's stepping on toes of his elders, treat his women like hoes, he exposed. Now we working with the Ottoman Turks, say he's descending from Muhammad, but that's not how this works. See, the crown was anointed by the Orthodox Church, so if you're all ruling as I, then you have to put Christ first.